whereas I'll be humiliated in public when I get the questions wrong. So let me just get those launched, and we'll also have people able to play if they're watching on one of the streams, which was the idea behind this. It varies hugely. Um, at the same time as we're doing the talk, about 20 to 30 nowadays. But afterwards, we get quite a few, more than watch the live thing, watch the actual recording. They're not part of the room community, and they can act through the questions if I happen to be looking at Twitch at the time they ask. Otherwise, they can't. Yeah. Okay. Hmm. Yeah. Well, I'll talk about I'll talk about that in a bit, because we will start the actual quiz soon, but some time to chat beforehand is good, and there are a few announcements that might be of interest to people. And then afterwards, we'll just go into a general social, as suggested by one of our very wise fans. And in future, after the cafe, we will be doing a separate room like this, so everyone can just jump in there and chat to each other. So thank you for that suggestion. It's a brilliant one. Right. Someone with a yellow mug. So yeah, that was suggested by George. Right. So we did. Yep, we've used it for games. Yeah. Right. Sorry, just quickly for those slightly confused watching on one of the streaming channels, we are going to go into the quiz. You can't hear the people in the Zoom audience, so you can only hear me. So you're getting about a fifth, maybe an eighth of the conversation, which is going to be quite confusing. But I do promise once we go into the quiz, it will make much more sense, and we'll do that in about 5 minutes. That wouldn't make it less confusing. And if everyone in the live studio interactive audience wants to check the chat, there's firstly, a talk on time, which I'm going to have to look at later. And secondly, I've dropped in the link for the answer sheet, which you will probably want. Yeah, it's not the actual answers, it's the space to put the answers in. If you have trouble with that, feel free to just write the answers on a piece of notepaper or something instead, and I will still take your word of honour that you're not cheating and not filling it in afterwards as we give the answers out if you give me your score. And with that, I'm going to... So hopefully it should just be the slide visible to everyone, and then you can see other people across the top. If you want to be in a team, then speak now, and I can drop you or create you your own breakout room so you can talk to each other between rounds. Yeah, if you're actually in the same physical room, I won't create you a breakout room. It's only if you want to match up with someone else who's in here. And I'm going to guess from the silence. Yeah, so everyone's okay with the team they're in. Pick your team name, that's the first bit. And if you're ready, oh, we've lost the raise hands button. I forgot about that. If you click reactions, you can do a thumbs up. So if you're ready for the questions to start, just do a thumbs up. Okay. Is that on the quiz question sheet or? Yep. Okay, that's where it's hiding. Yes, so the form separately, it won't show you any of the questions. You'll get those as we read through them. Yep. No, just complete on the form as you work out the answers together. So you will have time to chat through the questions, and if you can't use the form for whatever reason, there can be technical issues. Do just write on a piece of paper and be honest when you're marking. So I think it's actually a very question mark shaped island, but without further ado, round one. And the first talk was The Matrix of Confusion by Chris Bohr, who's actually in the audience today. And the first question is, in medicine, what are confusion matrices used to test? And question two, a type 2 error, again in confusion matrices, but also in other terminology, is also known as a false what? Well, which type of error is always getting something wrong when you know it? And finally, for this round, what number do you calculate if you divide true negatives by all negatives? And is everyone okay? Everyone heard the questions? Do you need any repeats? The answers come later. So round two, resilience or control, which was me, because this was in the early days before we actually had speakers volunteering. So if a system is hard to damage, it is what? And if a system can recover from or route around damage, it is what? Yeah, you can edit. Until you hit submit, you can delete and change answers. There's no points for not changing anything. And finally, on this round, the internet is theoretically and often in practice a what system? And that's from the two answers above. Yep. If a system can recover from or route around damage, it is what? It's okay. You hope for the best, and one of you sleeps with one eye open when you find out what the answer is. Okay. And then we had Dr. Katie Kennedy, who came in and told everyone how to enjoy exercise, or at least the psychology of what makes people dislike exercise and what makes people enjoy and persevere at it. But Dr. Kennedy has done most of her research on which sport? And was the research mostly quantitative or qualitative? And finally, what was Dr. Kennedy's advice for beginner runners struggling with going uphill? It was extremely good, sensible advice that I take to heart. By the way, we can actually hear you, Chris and Sarah. I'm not sure if you're aware. It is traditional in pub quizzes to be able to overhear people at the next table and quickly write down their answer if you think it's right. So I don't have a problem. I just thought you might want to know. Right. Any questions on how to enjoy exercise? And I do mean specifically on the questions in this, not just on how to do it. And here we go. Extreme vocals and the importance of vowels. So this was a particularly interesting one with a lot of reverb because it was filmed, or half of it was filmed in a studio, actual studio, not our studio. But it was with Rasmus Bohm Anderson, who I couldn't find on Twitter, but there is a Twitter handle there which may give away something. Rasmus is the lead vocalist for which band? And what is the tool that Rasmus described as being used to add distortion to the voice? And if you want a hint, this was not some sort of technical audio tool. It's Well, I think this is going to be quarterly because otherwise we're going to get too many questions built up. An annual quiz is just too much. Too many questions, at least. What, between the teams in the Halls of Fame? Quite possibly. It's not a bad idea, that. Right. And finally, how many academically acknowledged systems of teaching singing did Rasmus mention? Okay. And sorry, before I move on, does anyone need any of those repeated? Are there widespread demands for hints on any of them? Okay, so nearly halfway through now. Sensing in plants, which gave some of us nightmares about triffids and fears of stepping in the garden for a few days. What is the name of the mimic vine that may have some form of vision? So this was specifically used as an example by Bethany. And which plant did Bethany use as an example of trees speaking, or more accurately, communicating audibly? We actually heard it speaking in the talk, but I couldn't find the recording, so you've got the easier version rather than just being told which plant sounds like this. And then which plant alters its fecundity based on its habitat? Don't worry, they're not all at this level of difficulty. It's because some of the topics it's harder to pull out ones related to the talk, which are easy without being obvious. So instead, I erred on the sides of them being harder. Besides which, I always have to answer questions about pop bands and TV in pub quizzes. So for once, I'm getting revenge. Okay. Any questions about those? Any clarification, concerns? Anyone want to go and attack the garden with a lawnmower because they've just been reminded of something traumatic? Okay, so I'm going to suggest we do the next round, the next three questions. That brings us halfway through all of the questions, and then everyone grabs a drink, takes a break, 5 minutes just to relax. Okay. So number 6. The Psychology of Technology, and it was actually past, present, and future. The problem is the full title didn't fit very well. And that was by Amy Orban, whose Twitter handle is obviously up there. And in 1941, there was moral panic about children being exposed to what media? And then giving your child what is like giving them a gram of cocaine. And that was from a particularly well-known paper that gave plenty of headlines at the time that Amy brought up in the talk. And finally, technology panics are inherently what? Right, so if you now take a few minutes to discuss, relax, recharge glasses. I'm halfway through mine, but need a refill anyway. And just generally chat while you can. Feel free to discuss answers and give the other teams the right or wrong answer just to help them out. They they do get easier. There are some easier ones in there. Yeah. Uh, and yes, Nikki, I was angling for a refill. Yep, we've got all 11 talks to date, so that does include Shark Saturday. Well, we've got one coming up that I'm quite excited about, which is we're going to try and get the subtitle, or get it subtitled and get it translated to Portuguese on request of the speaker. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that one plays out. One of the upcoming talks on laser spectroscopy, we're going to get subtitles sorted and get it translated to Portuguese, which I think then makes us officially multilingual. We've done international. We've had speakers from both sides of the world, or all three sides, depending on how you want to look at it. But we're now going to be looking at having multilingual ones, depending on what we can do translation-wise. This it's not quite a bottle of wine. It would be a bit much for a bottle of wine. There we go. Right, has everyone grabbed a refill? Is everyone ready to crack on and get the last 5 rounds done and then find out the answers? It's okay. This is a test of this format, by the way, so feedback afterwards is more than welcome, because I am thinking quarterly is about right, but if there's things that can be improved, such as the breakout rooms for teams, I think are an idea. but I'm not entirely sure how well they'll work. Yes, yeah. Well, if it helps, I didn't know there was going to be a quiz at the end of the quarter. So this is due to another clock-related issue. Although Saturday's talk, where I've got a nice promo slide for it later, actually I'll do that now while we wait for teams to reunite, will be with Ashley Holub, and I think it's particularly relevant for us. We're going very self-referential, almost vain, but talking about science. So Ashley is an epidemiologist who specialises in or does a lot of work on science communication. Yes, it's a timing issue again. So I'm fairly convinced now the solution is everyone should just convert to UTC, including us, and then we just use that going forwards. Yeah, I'm going to watch it after this and see if I can hook one of them into speaking. Yeah, we're not doing too badly actually. This is pretty fast for a pub quiz. 2 days ago, I, I I had some help with some of them, but I think I spent a couple of hours in total getting them all sorted. Okay, so next, microwaves, mobiles, and masts, and this was by Chris Bohr again. So the G in the controversial 5G refers to what? And does microwave radiation have a wavelength longer or shorter than visible light? I've just realised I've included the wrong question there, so that was clever. That was a deliberate error to catch you out. Um, so, what is the number that you calculate if you divide true negatives by all negatives? Is going to be the question there. So, if you worked it out before, you've got an extra point. I don't have the correct question. Well, anyone who gets three, question three. So, what protects you best against microwave radiation? Is it tinfoil or skin? Does anyone need any of those repeating? Okay, so on to Ken Rice's talk on exoplanets and Earth's climate, and I've focused mainly on exoplanets because the heat distracted me from climate change. What shift allows us to detect exoplanets? And no, night shift is not a suitable answer. I should start doing bingo calling. Okay. And how many exoplanets have been detected and are considered confirmed to the closest thousand? It depends how I feel at the time. I am remembering that, yes. Okay, and finally, where are our closest exoplanets? I feel that might be overconfidence from the team down in Woking. Okay, any of those need repeating? Right, so moving on. Number 9, the hidden universe. Seeing the universe with invisible light. So, that is the answer sheet, which will make it a lot easier for you all. I told you I got this together quickly. Let me just confirm something. Well, I'm just making sure. Okay, here we go. We'll skip to the next one and come back to that. I will ask them later when you've all forgotten. So, number 10. This was Eloise Stivons, all the way from New Zealand. This was a special late night session. So, first of all, what caused the dimming of Betelgeuse? And what are the 3 types of nova? That's probably not the right answer. And then third one, if you lived through the collision with Andromeda, the galaxy, are you likely to be hit by a star? Yes. Yes, the collision between the Milky Way and Andromeda. And if the Earth is likely to be hit by a star, then you can put yes, you are likely to be hit by a star. Well, really, it should be if you live to it, but you'd have to live quite a while. It's not a big concern for most people. No, no, you definitely would not live through being hit. Well, if you live until the collision, I don't know what's going to kill you, and it's possible being hit by a star wouldn't. But there we go. Okay, second to last round. The next round will be the hidden round, the secret round, so that you can't read the answers straight off the slide. Suitably, it's the hidden universe one. But Shark Saturday, the last talk we had, what shark has eyes that glow pale blue? This does not mean there are laser beams involved anywhere, for anyone who's watched Austin Powers. And is it true that all sharks have to keep moving to stay alive? And finally, how high can a breaching shark leap? And this is the one that can leap the highest. And you can put that in either meters or, if you must, feet. Yes, but that's west coast of America. They still use imperial. Yep. We might have to set a metric standard for speakers, or just say you must always use Kelvin. Right. So, last round before the answers. The hidden universe. You may have got some of these down, and if you did, then just count it as a personal bonus and some bonus points. What is the name of the podcast Jennifer Millard presents on? Yeah, that's number one. And then, is ultraviolet or infrared astronomy used to detect hotter stars? And finally, the experimental technology question. So hopefully you'll hear this. What is this sound? Silent. Wonderful. Okay, let me just... Still silent? Give me 1 second. Here we go. Okay. Were you able to hear it that time? Were you able to hear it that last time? Hmm? Yep. Okay. So we have 5 responses so far. What was that, sorry? If you need me to jump back and remind you of any, just say so. Hmm. And I see that 2 of the 5 are a double submission by one team, so take note of that. Okay. Are we ready for answers to start? That's okay. Well, I'm quite happy to trust you not to change your answers. So, round 1, the matrix of confusion. Confusion matrices are used to test tests. I'm predicting some potential debate on this one, but medical trials, tests, medical devices, diagnostics, all sorts of different things, so long as it boils down to some form of test. And a type 2 error is also known as a false negative. And finally, the number you calculate if you divide true negatives by all negatives is specificity, which I usually can't say after about 8:30 on a Cafe Sci. Anyway, right, so if a system is hard to damage, it's robust. If a system can recover from or route around damage, it's resilient. And the internet is theoretically and often in practice, but not always, a resilient system. Dr. Katie Kennedy, she focused mainly on running in her research, with qualitative research, and her excellent advice for beginner runners struggling with hills is walk. Right. Rasmus is the lead vocalist for Diamond Head. He described the epiglottis tongue as being used to add distortion to the voice. No, completely different thing. The tongue and the epiglottis tongue are not the same thing, and you really don't want them to be in the same place. I don't know, but I will be checking and verifying response marks later, so I may be generous, I may not, once I actually look up the terminology. And Rasmus mentioned 3 academically acknowledged systems of teaching singing. Okay. So the name of the mimic vine that may have some form of vision is Bokila. If it sounds like Bokila when I see it, yes. If you provide tequila, you can get an extra point, yes. And the plant used as an example of trees speaking was the Scots pine. And the plant which alters its fecundity based on its habitat, whether it's higher up a mountain or lower down, is the stonecress. Psychology of technology. So in 1941, there was moral panic and academic articles written about children being exposed to crime and horror radio shows. You don't need to have all of that. I will let you get away with just radio or crime shows or horror shows. And giving your child a smartphone is like giving them a gram of cocaine, though it is more expensive. No. Yeah, but it's a smartphone. We're talking about smartphones here. And anyway, you will get a point for an iPhone. 1 point only. Technology panics are inherently cyclical. They go round and round. So microwaves, mobiles, and masts. The G in 5G is generation. Yep. Uh, Microwave radiation is longer than visible light. And the answer to the hidden secret question is that skin is a better protector against microwave radiation than tinfoil. No. Uh, Exoplanets. The shift that allows us to detect exoplanets is redshift. Around 4,000 exoplanets have been detected and are considered confirmed. And our closest exoplanets are 6 of them around Proxima Centauri b. So quite a long commute, but bear it in mind as this year goes on. Right. So the bonus round, because you may have had 3 marks from it. The name of the podcast that Jennifer Millard presents on was or is Awesome Astronomy Podcast, or Awesome Astronomy Pod is also acceptable. Ultraviolet is used to detect hotter stars, and the sound was the radio signal of a meteor shower. If you just went with meteor shower, radio signal of a meteor, they're all fine as well. And then Eloise Stevens. The dimming of Betelgeuse was caused by dust, it generating a whole load of dust. The three types of nova are nova, supernova, and kilonova. No. And if you live through the collision with Andromeda, you are not likely to be hit by a star. As Eloise mentioned, as Dr. Stevens mentioned, space is mostly made up of space. And then final round. The shark that has eyes that glow pale blue is the lantern shark. It's not true that all sharks have to keep moving to stay alive. And a breaching shark can leap 30 feet or 9 meters most accurately, but if you put 10, I might give you the point when I mark them anyway. Yeah, it's annoyingly 30 feet is about 9.1 meters apparently. So, yeah, may as well be. My bigger question is how accurately do you want to? I'm not going to stand there with a meter stick trying to wait for it to leap over. Right. So with that, for everyone playing along at home, uh, well done if you won, but I won't tell you the marks. And for everyone in the room, I'm going